the first back to school learning lab hosted by Boxlight and MimioSTEM. This Today's topic is going to be all about 3D design, specifically talking about Tinkercad tools and tips. My name is Hannah Daniels. I'm here with Jillian Dale, and my background is actually in 3D modeling and design. That's what I went to school for. I studied animation and learned how to do 3D modeling and design there, and then, of course, applied it to the 3D printing world. So that's how I got my whole start, and this is definitely in my wheelhouse and something I love and something that is so very powerful. Jillian, why don't you talk a bit about your background and experience with 3D design?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been with Boxlight for about 2.5 years now, and my background came from the classroom. So I was a STEM teacher for a few years, and my principal got, a really nice grant and was able to buy a lot of STEM equipment for us. Unfortunately, I didn't have the resources and support that I needed to actually use that technology in the classroom. So now, in my role, I get to be the person that I needed when I was the STEM teacher. So now I get to help teachers, across the country make sure that they're utilizing the technology and feel comfortable utilizing it, and can implement it with some educational value.
That's so important, as you know firsthand. So yeah, this learning lab is brought to you by MimioSTEM. We sell a whole variety of products. This is not going to be a sales pitch, but I just wanted to mention that this is our MimioSTEM selection. We have a really cool all-in-one STEAM lab, very fun portable science labs, as well as professional development. And then the ones that are more relevant to today, we have a high-speed education-focused 3D printer, which you can see in my virtual background on this side of me, which is apparently a mirror image to how my hands want to move. And then the company that I am the co-founder of is My STEM Kits, and it has loads and loads of engineering design challenges in it, as well as over 250, give or take, 3D printable kits that are already designed and ready for you. So that's what I've been doing for the last decade plus in the education world. So let's kick this off with a question, get an idea of where our audience is skill level. So just a 1 through a 5. When it comes to 3D design, would you consider yourself one, excited to get started, but you haven't done anything? All the way up to 5, you're like me, you've been doing it for, many, many years, you're very comfortable, and the whole range in between. All right. I am mostly seeing 1, 2s, and 3s.
A wide variety.
Yep, got a 4 that came in. Cool. Well, we hope we have a little something for everyone today. We're going to be talking about how to, this is going to be a little bit more tutorially than just conversationally because we do want you to have a lot of learning value out of this. Not that we don't try and put learning value in all of our podcasts, but we are going to be doing a lot of screen showing and actually walking you through some steps here to get you all started.
So Hannah, I know you like to use Tinkercad to build a lot of your design challenges through my STEM kits. Why do you pick Tinkercad over anything else?
Yeah, so we prompted that question. We knew this was going to come because I think it's really important to highlight. So Tinkercad has been our design software of choice, as it is for many educators all over the world, for a few really key logical reasons. The first one being it is fully free to absolutely anyone. I think that is so important for schools because not everything can be, not everything is, but Tinkercad is, and as far as I can tell, Autodesk has no plan of changing that because they want people to be designing and engineering so that they grow up and then build their professional industry level software, which I learned on and many other professional engineers use in the real world. But the other reasons I love it is it has built-in tutorials. So we're going to show you a little bit today, but we're not really going to focus on the nuts and bolts of it. We'll show a little bit of that, but the built-in tutorials are great. They're also a great way to get your students learning. Generally, I just love that it's easy to use. and its classroom management features. What about you, Jillian?
Yeah, I like that it's all ready to go. And they give really good instructions for the teacher, especially if this is something that's brand new to you. So it will be, step-by-step directions with pictures, and that's really, really helpful for somebody who's new to this whole process.
One of the other things I didn't even think about to put on the slide that makes it extra like easy to use and applicable in schools is the fact that Tinkercad actually works pretty well across a wide range of devices. I typically use it on a PC, but because it's web-based, it goes on literally any device and it's touch friendly. Like they have options for you to use it on tablets or whatever your school has for your student devices.
Yeah, I was working with a school and they had their kindergartners doing designs using iPads. And it was really easy and simple for the kindergartners to understand what the tools were within Tinkercad, but then also to create, successful models.
I remember years ago, I had my nibblings over my nieces and nephews, and at that point, the youngest ones were even pre-kindergarten age. I don't remember how young they were at that point, maybe even 3 or 4 years old. And I kind of just threw them into Tinkercad and walked them through a tiniest little bit, and it just they ran with it. It's so nice and easy, and I love that about it.
Well, kids today are so tech savvy and they pick things up very, very quickly. So I think such a simple platform that it's easy for them to kind of guide themselves through their learning.
All right. Well, since we are going to be doing lots of Tinkercad things, I know we could jump into why we love it and the benefits of 3D design and engineering and creative thinking, because there are so many benefits. I figure on that one we are preaching to the choir. So rather than sell you all on why you should be doing 3D design, let's jump into it. And Jillian, why don't you share a little bit about Tinkercad Classroom specifically and show folks how they can get a Tinkercad Classroom set up if they want to. And then after that, we can actually go into doing some 3D design demonstrations.
Sure. All right, so here is my Tinkercad dashboard when I log in. So as you can see, I'm signed up as an educator. So when you sign up for Tinkercad, make sure that you are signing up as an educator because that will give you this option over here to add classes in. And I really like Tinkercad Classroom because when I was a STEM teacher, I had all of the kids in the whole school. And it was pretty difficult to make sure that I'm keeping all of their separate projects, separate and make sure that I understand their progress on it, and can provide, feedback in real time to them. And
Let alone year to year.
exactly, exactly. And Tinkercad Classroom allows you to do that with your students. So if you come over here and you click on the classes, you can create your own list of classes so they can be however you want them to, to be archi or to be listed in here. If you want all of your fifth graders in one course, go ahead and do that. If you want to break it up by homeroom, it's totally up to you. But all you have to do is you come in here and you hit create new class. You enter in a class name and then select your grades. And then I always keep class safe mode on. That makes sure that your students' designs are not just published to the web. So it gives them a
It's a
little bit,
very nice setting.
yeah, it gives a little bit more safety there. And that way you know that your students' designs are not just out there for anybody to see. So subject is not required. You're welcome to select that, but then you just hit create class. And it creates your classroom for you. So this would be like your homeroom. And then to add your students, you have a couple different options. You can paste in a list of students. So if you just wanted to paste in your list of students, you could do that straight in from your roster. Or you could actually click on this share class link and post this into your Canvas or your Google Classroom, whatever LMS that you're using. That way students can come, they can click directly on this link, or they can type in this code when they're joining your classroom. It makes it super simple for them to sign up. And then Tinkercad uses, single sign-on, so it's easy for students to be able to sign on and use. And then once you have all of your students loaded in, let me show you a different classroom. So here's all of my students. So then I can come up here to activities and I can start creating different activities or different assignments that I want my students to complete. So for these are different name tag keychains, and I can actually give them a base that I want them to start with. So each of these students received this base keychain, and you can kind of see down here, here's their designs for that specific project. Now, the nice thing about it too is you can see all of their designs for everything that they've been doing. So you don't just have to look at that activity. You can actually click on designs and you can see everything that they've done. And you can also come in here and you can add a co-teacher. If you wanted somebody else to be able to see what your students are doing in that class, or maybe you want to add the homeroom teacher to it so that they can see and they can share parent-teacher conferences, that sort of thing. It's an easy way to add teachers to that, or yeah, to add teachers to that. And then when you're done with your class, you can always archive it and then it will stay there for your next school year. So that way you can come back and you can see, okay, these are the projects that we did. These were the successful ones. These are the ones that I want to do again this year. So it makes it nice and easy monitoring your students and making sure that they're completing the project that you've assigned to them.
What I really love about what you just showed is the projects. So that is especially useful for your youngest students, where maybe working in dimensions and millimeters is going to be a challenge for them or something. So having like this blank keychain design ready to go where all they have to do is make a few small tweaks like add their name or add a picture really simplifies it on your end for execution. And this is a feature that Tinkercad added within the last few years. I don't remember exactly when, but I know some of the earliest design challenges that we wrote in my STEM kits uh, didn't talk about that because it wasn't a feature yet. So I wanted to make sure everyone saw that because that can really simplify how to go about doing activities with really young students. Or if you want to give everyone a starting point, or even for older students, like, hey, here's what we're working from, here's the previous design, now you need to alter it to do something else. Um, I do see a chat question here. Lonnie asked, can you quickly go over how to set up a classroom? Unfortunately, we did just do that, but I'm going to put a link in the chat here to we have a whole YouTube playlist on design challenges and resources for you on our YouTube page. And one of the very top ones in this playlist is an entire 28-minute introduction to Tinkercad by Tinkercad. It is done by Christian Pramuk. He's one of the creators over there, and this was part of a Ready Set STEM event we did a couple years ago. So it's a great, more thorough introduction to that. It's also just a great YouTube playlist for a lot of other design tips and STEM resources and even things you can do with your students, where it's, all right, everyone, we're gonna live in real time walk through how to create a holiday blank. Maybe it was an ornament or let's see, I've got a shamrock here, a 3D Valentine. We did a lot of holiday themed ones. So,
I like watching those videos too to think about how I want to word things to my students. Because sometimes like I don't want to give them too much information. I want them to also learn while they're doing this process. So sometimes when I'm listening to the videos, I'm listening to like the words that you say and the questions that you ask. Because that's a good way to, continue modeling that for your students.
oh, that makes me happy. So yeah, and for anyone watching the recording, this will be in the YouTube playlist chat down below or the description down below. Any links we're posting live during the session, we will be putting in the chat when we post this onto YouTube. So I know we had a bunch of people who registered but emailed me saying, I'm not going to make it live because I have students. Can I watch the recording? So all of this will be recorded and posted to the same YouTube channel. So, subscribe. All right. Well, Jillian, I know we had planned to spend sort of the second half of this session with me in Tinkercad, showing off a whole bunch of cool tools and tips. I'll do a little intro to how to basically do things. But I'd also love to hear what your favorite tool or thing is in Tinkercad that you just find yourself using all the time.
Okay, I will show you, but it's probably not like the, most glamorous tool. But there's a reason why I love this tool so much, and it's because it's super helpful for students. Okay, so when you are zoomed in, you are looking at your object from all the different angles. You are checking your sides, doing everything that you need to do. And now you can't figure out how to get back because you are just lost somewhere in this orientation view. If you come up
Oh, I
here,
have seen this happen so many times.
and it is this little button is easily missed. And so I just want to make sure that people know where it's at. Hit that home button and it will take you exactly back to where you need to go to view that object. You can also use this little box up here to really change your orientation and figure out, all the different angles and look at your object from the different sides, make sure that everything is where it needs to be. But when you get zoomed in and you can't seem to get back to where you need to go, click that little home button and it will take you right back. And I promise you that will save you a lot of sanity when you are teaching this to your students.
I also thank you for showing off the view cube. That's the thing she was clicking to change the angles. Now, if you're doing 3D design in Tinkercad with your students and you don't have touch screens, we highly, highly recommend that you use a 3-button mouse. That will make everything so much easier. But if you don't have 3-button mice, that view cube is your best friend because it gets a little tricky to navigate a 3D environment if you're just using the little touchpad on a laptop. Um, so definitely worth showing. I also love the button below that. That is the frame all items. So I've definitely found students will delete things they don't want by just shoving them way off into the beyond. And they end up way out in the middle of nowhere, and then you take their file and you go to 3D print it, and suddenly there's a bunch of stuff that's way out there that they may not have even realized was there. And that frame button will put everything in frame so you can find the parts that they didn't actually mean to have in their design and delete them before trying to 3D print it or whatnot. All right. So at this point, I think I'm gonna take over screen sharing. And I do see we already have one question in the chat. Is there only one font type in Tinkercad? Please
Good
do
question.
send questions like that. I will be showing off a variety of tools that I like to use, but I would love to show you specifically things like that, questions that you have that you want to know about. And I don't really have too much of a set agenda for this. I have a vague idea in my mind of some of my favorite tools and tips that I've learned. But the goal of this is to, of course, show you a lot of different things. I am not going to be going at a follow along speed. So just know that in advance. I would more sit back, take it in, take notes, or watch the recording later. It will be posted to the MimioSTEM YouTube. So if you want to follow back on any of these things, you will be able to do that. So I'll create a brand new 3D design. And one thing I want to show you before I even get started with 3D modeling is if you are doing this for 3D printing and you know your printer's dimensions, going down into settings here and setting up this work plane to match your 3D printer, like mine right now is set up to match our, I don't know if that's the default or if that was our E3, but I can like change this value. It won't let me click on it. It is very unhappy with me today to like 220 to match my specific type of 3D printer. That way I know what's going to be uh, able to fit on the build plate, and I can just click make default. And now every time I open up Tinkercad, it's going to show me the size build plate that I want to be working on. I did not expect to see Hello STEM Wednesday when I changed the name up there. Apparently I have done a live Tinkercad before. That was what we used to call these learning labs. All right, so starting with the first question of, is there only one type font? Um, if I go into text and pull it in, just like with any other object in Tinkercad, I just click and drag and drop to bring it into the scene. Or sometimes this is easier if people are on tablets. You can also click once and click a second time to bring it in. Two different ways to bring objects in. Am I not sharing my screen? I
You're
have,
good.
can you share your screen is one of the questions that just came in. I will stop sharing and resharing just in case. Can you do the size adjustment for a whole class? I don't think so. I think you may have to walk your students through that on the first time they create it, but then after that it will be saved as the default. All right. Back to sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see it. If not, the recording may be the better option for you, Sharon. Uh, So with these text ones, I can type in whatever I want and I can select fonts. So default it does multi-language, but there is a sans mono, and serif fonts. I like the sans font the best. And then for 3D printing specifically, I want it to be bold because this doesn't always print really well. So I always manually change the bevel and the segments to 1. It just is a way of faking it into being a bold font. But I specifically use this sans bevel 1 segments 1 every time I do font in my STEM kits or anywhere else because it prints well. Sometimes your serifed options just get a little messier and a little harder to read in 3D printing. So that's my personal preference, but yes, you can adjust fonts. You can also, let's say you've got any, if we have any cricketers out there or any InDesign, Adobe, Inkscape fans out there who do lots of work with other vector-based software, you can even import SVGs or STLs in here. So if you have scaled vector graphics, such as a logo or a font that you really want, your school's logo font, you can actually import that type of file in here. So that's what I've done to get like our Robo logo on things, is I imported it as an SVG file and then was able to have that specific Robo font on anything I did in 3D.
So like a school that wanted to make keychains with their school logo on them, they could do that loading in the SVG file through
Yep.
Tinkercad.
If you do have a JPEG instead of an SVG, Tinkercad can't do that. Uh,
Okay.
but RoboPrint can. Um, and that is in the YouTube playlist. There's a how to turn pictures like JPEGs into 3D models using RoboPrint. So that would be a way you could work around that for JPEG images if you don't have access to the SVG for your school.
Nice. I do have a question about the text. So I get this question a couple times a year. When you're adding text to an object, what would be the recommended height for the text so that it doesn't, look weird when it sticks off the object?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I see like you'll have students start here with some sort of a basic keychain type shape, and then they always just leave the font at the default height. Even if they end up scaling it like way down this way, it ends up being very awkwardly tall oftentimes. So I like setting mine up to for bases like this, I will often set them to about 2 millimeters. And for the font above it, again, just about 2 millimeters. You don't need a lot of depth for things to be solid. So 2 to 3 for a base, 2 to 3 for the font. Now, the easiest way to accurately tell what size you're setting things up to is to use the ruler. That's one of your tools in the top right here. And I can just click and drag that in. And now all of my objects not only have a distance from this origin point that I set way out in the middle of nowhere, they also have dimensions. So I can tell, okay, cool, I did set my base to 2 just by eyeballing it because I've done this a lot. And this one, I can now do the math and make that 4. And now it's going to set nice and happy on top of this. Now, one other nice feature that a lot of people may not realize unless you do a lot of work in things like Photoshop and InDesign and a lot of those that have the same keyboard shortcut is if I don't want my font to do this, I can press down the Shift key on the keyboard and it will lock my font into its set dimensions. This is really useful for font and for anything that's supposed to be a sphere or a perfect cylinder or any of those things, so you don't have to go back and, adjust the dimensions afterwards. But keep in mind that if you use the Shift key, my Z-axis also scaled. That's my depth. So I would need to go back and adjust that down. That's why Jillian mentioned right away, definitely want things to be checking in multiple angles, multiple dimensions, all the time, constantly. Now, a few other cool tools I want to highlight. One of the requests, or one of the easy ways to adjust things or to find ways to make your technology go to the next step is by looking in the shape box. Now, every single basic shape has a different set of options, but I really like radius to sort of round corners on this. But let's say I want it to look like a rounded rectangle and not this weird blob shape. There are always ways to fake things, and sometimes you just have to get a little creative. So I've got a height of 24. I'm going to set my width to 24. And now I'm going to use just keyboard shortcuts, copy and paste, or I can use the buttons up here and just paste a whole line of these. And now I have a nice rounded rectangle kind of corner. I can even take one of these middle ones and stretch it out because it's not really going to do anything, but it gives me a more finished, professional looking kind of design by combining objects that way. One of the other basic shape designs that has more functionality than it may look like is the cone, because you can actually set the top radius as well to give you sort of a truncated cone if you need anything that's just slightly tapered for a cylinder. We use this for anything that connects to like a straw because straws are all various diameters. So you want it to be slightly tapered when you're attaching a straw to a 3D print.
My first thought when you made that shape was like a game piece. What kind of game pieces can students make using Tinkercad?
Oh, so all of them. No.
Yep.
Literally, my husband years ago asked, like, I want to build this thing to 3D print it, and I was out of the house driving somewhere for work, and so I talked him through how to do everything in Tinkercad over the phone. I'm like, press the button here, because I know Tinkercad very well at this point. He's like, this is a little insane that you know where all the buttons are. Now, I want to show a couple other tools. Let's say I have created some strange contraption here. This totally makes sense. I know exactly what I'm building. I have no idea what I'm building. Here, it'll be a person. I'm building a person. And I've got some things here, and I've tried to sort of roughly line them up, but they're not perfect. Many of you may know about the align button, which is up here in the top. And I can click on it and I can line things up in multiple dimensions this way, which is really useful. But occasionally I've gone through all this effort of creating, my basic person here, and now I want to give him a hat. And well, I can kind of tap it on just like this. This is a newer thing that Tinkercad does, but I want to keep it perfectly straight and I want to line it up, perfectly centered on this guy's head. First, I'm going to use the switch to a flat or orthographic view. That way I can get my height where I want it. You notice how that just sort of flattens everything out. Before I was working in 3D, I couldn't tell exactly where things were, the orthographic switch. And sometimes Tinkercad does this weird thing where you have to go in and out of it a couple times, and then it'll actually line back up. I have not figured out why that is, but... Oh, and you have to click on the view cube to be perfectly centered. That's another good part of it. But if I want to line this up side to side here and make sure it's perfectly lined up without just eyeballing it, now that I have it at the height I want, the align feature gives me the option of, let's say I don't want to move all of these. They're here in a scene, I have a diorama, whatever it is. When I click on the align button, by default, it wants to move everything to the middle. But if I click a second time on one of my objects, it will now move these little align buttons over to that object. So now I can just move my cone to my pre-existing thing. I know this is something that I remember showing this in a live training a few years ago, and like the IT guy, the one who knew the most about 3D printing in the room, just was like, oh man, that could have saved me so much time. So it's like, yeah, this is a tool that's a little harder to find. I may have stumbled across it along the way, but you know, I like to share those. Another useful tool for lining things up well is, let's say I want to create, little feet, little round feet for my little character here. And I want two of them that are perfectly lined up on this cylinder. Now I want to use the align tool, but I can't do that with two objects. Let's say I've made some fancy shoes way more than just a simple object. Um, what I like to do for lining up two objects, because if I do this right now and I try and take them over here, notice they turn into a single oval instead of saying two separate feet. You can group them first using the group button here and then line them up. So I grouped the 2 feet. Now I'm going to align, and I want to align where he already is. So now it lined him up this way, and I can just slide him back. I am also using a keyboard shortcut right now for shift. That is making sure I don't wander side to side very far. I'm only going straight back. So that's another good keyboard shortcut to learn. And I can set up these feet now, but they're actually centered the way I wanted them by grouping them first. Anytime you're trying to do like rotational things, especially setting up something on both sides of your center axis and then rotating, because rotating always happens around the center, is really useful.
Now, if you wanted to add like text to his shirt or something, would you do that the same way that you're using the align tool?
For that, I might actually wander into this search function and see if there's some sort of text that's rounded. Now, ooh, yes, there is. I thought there might be. The search button is really nice. Definitely recommend using it. And if you find things you love, you can star them and then search your favorited things. So I will favorite this and pull this in, and oh, well, it's got a mind of its own, but it generally seems to be working. Well, I pressed a button. This font does seem to have different font choices here and a few different settings that I can adjust and see what they do. But yeah, generally speaking, I would be doing the same kind of concept. I would, scale it down. It does seem to have a delay, I'm noticing, as it updates. And then, yeah, line it up or just manually move it around, kind of like I am now, to see how I like it and how I move it. But if I'm going to try and line it up perfectly with this, at some point I am inevitably going to be using that align tool. I'm just getting to know this one. I've never used this thing before. Oh, that looks better. That looks like a better t-shirt kind of angle here. All right. So I'm not going to bother showing that. I do want to show a couple other cool features. I can't help it. I have to line it up. One of the other things that Tinkercad added recently, which I think is really interesting, is let's say I have added something to this hat, and right now it defaults to sitting on the side of it. But oh no, I've clicked outside of it. I want to scale it down, but I don't want to lose it from the surface it's already on. I can use this. There's a shape work plane button, and now it orients the work plane to that shape. Before you had to grab the work plane button and like add it to the face you wanted, and now I can just do this. I'm using that shift key to keep my star in a nice orientation, and I was also using Alt to scale from the middle. These are just similar keyboard shortcuts to a lot of design things that you may naturally come across or that you may be familiar with if you use some of other like 2D design software, or it may be something you just learn over time, uh, trial and error. Now, one of the other cool things Tinkercad added recently is this cruise button. Let's say I don't want the star there, I want the star over here. Notice it is staying attached to my surface and doing the rotating for me. This is a newer feature that is really cool. So I can always click on cruise, and I'm going to try something new. You're getting to see a live finding out if this works. I'm going to hold down the Alt button and grab this. Nope, had to find out. Sometimes in software that would allow you to duplicate things. Instead, the way to duplicate it is just click the duplicate button here. And I can click that a couple times, and what it's doing is creating copies that are exactly in the same place. And now I can use that cruise tool and bring them all over because they're all living here in one place and just slide them around the hat. Now, as I use this multiple times, I am immediately mousing over this to see what my keyboard shortcut is. It is C, so I'm going to start using C, save myself time and effort as I go about adjusting this every time I want to do it. Keyboard shortcuts are your friend, and they are in the standards. So, you know, it is not just for you, it is also for your students. Now, one question that Nasim submitted was, let's say you have something like this, where a student wants to 3D print something that's made up of multiple objects that are kind of placed together. Will it print as one piece? Well, sort of. What I recommend doing is grouping them. So to group your objects, you can click and drag a box over all of them and click the group button to combine them. That actually merges all the geometry into one. That'll just make it less likely to have any weird print defects or anything like that. It'll take a moment to think, and then when they group, it will typically, oh, this may be new. Normally it changes it into a single color. It seems to have defaulted to multicolor, so we no longer have that visual indicator of it being grouped. But when I click on it, it's now moving and behaving as if one object. One other tip, if you are having students 3D print these, is, uh-oh, my feet go lower than the body of my little creature here. Always recommend cutting off the bottom. And the way to do that in Tinkercad is to use these rounded or these diagonal shaped boxes. And as soon as I bring one in, I just take this top little white square, drag it all the way down, and then scale it way bigger than my object is. Now, if I group these two together, it will cut off the pieces that are below my ground plane, and I have a nice flat surface for printing.
What if your object is hovering above the work plane? Is there a keyboard shortcut to get it onto the work plane?
Yeah, so sometimes you'll notice a shadow, sometimes it'll be really close, like maybe a student accidentally had it at 0.05 and it's visually not necessarily even that you can tell it's off the build plate. I'm going to bring it higher though, so it's easier to see. Tinkercad also added this button, drop to work plane, which is the keyboard shortcut D. Click on that, it'll bring it down. Very useful if you are doing multiple student designs together. So if I had a whole bunch of designs here that my students made, so this is an example one that I have for a whole bunch of symbols from literature that students did. And I want to make sure all of these are on the same build plate, or I want to add this little dude to my other scene and make sure he's on the build plate. Definitely be using this drop to work plane button. And the easiest way to combine files is to open them up in multiple internet tabs like I just did. So I have him, I have my symbols collage, I can copy him and paste him, and now he's in this scene too, and line everything up and make sure it's set up well for my 3D printer, and then I can print all of these at once. So that's a really good sort of classroom management thing. If you're doing multiple designs, is make sure you go through and click everything, drop to platform, and it'll just increase your odds of success with 3D printing. Um, the other thing uh, I want to show is how you would get this to your 3D printer. I know we are supposedly doing this as a 45-minute webinar, so I will try and get to a good stopping point in the next couple minutes, which is how to get it out of here. Once you have all of your objects, you can go to export, and this can be a single object or all of them. And you can download it as an STL. That's for anyone who has a different type of 3D printer or anything like that. Or if you are one of our Robo 3D printer users, you can actually click on the Robo logo right under the 3D print tab. And I notice there's a few other types of printers in here as well. I know this works with all of our E3, E3 Pro, E4, and E4 Pro models of printers. And when I click on that Robo button, it actually sends it over to our Robo Cloud print platform and will print them all that way. Kathy asked, when you print multiple designs, will they all be the same color? Yes, with 3D printing, it's just like a sewing machine. You load one color in the machine, and that's the color things come out. Oh, you had an extra comment there, Jillian. You want to add that as I'm reading
Yeah,
your
yeah.
comment?
So with the robo printers, you can pause the printer and load in new filament. And with Robo Print, the desktop software, you actually have the ability to pre-plan your pauses. So you can select which layer you would like the printer to stop at, load in new filament, and then it will continue printing in that new color, which is really nice if you're adding like text to an object and you want the text to stick out a little bit more. I think Hannah's showing a piece like that. And so it's nice for that way you're not having to stand at the printer and wait to pause it. You can plan out when you want it to stop.
Yeah, so this is one I did with some of our letters and sounds. It's one of our English language arts kits. If you don't catch it in time, if you don't use RoboPrint, that can like pause it for you. You can also take a Sharpie or a paint pen. So this is just done with a paint marker after the fact, and it accomplishes the same concept, but it did take me coming back afterwards and drawing it in because sometimes I lose track of time, as do we all. And I didn't get to pausing it in time for that print. So there are also workarounds. 3D printing also takes paint really well. So like this is part of our world topography kit and it has the Nile Valley painted in. I did a color filament change for the water, like for water level versus basic level, but for the Nile Valley, it was so flat. And it would have been misinformation because it's so flat that there were sections that are not part of the river delta that would have shown up if I had changed that layer. So yeah, paint is also great. I typically use acrylic, but I'm sure tempera would work well. Sharpies work okay. They just sometimes bleed filament a little bit. Oh, hey, I forgot. Speaking of paint from our art impressionism kit, you can also paint, Van Gogh. So this is just my bag of goodies that I bring to trainings with me, so it was all nearby. Well, we can stick around for a little bit for anyone who has questions, but I do want to respect everybody's time and just let you all know we will be back with another one of these learning labs next month. I've got our contact info up there. Feel free to reach out with questions, or if you want to learn more about any of these other product lines. Next month, we're going to be featuring the Explorus as well as more Tinkercad and design. Our topic is going to be full steam ahead, bringing art into STEM and other subject areas, let's be honest. But it'll be me and Evan, and we're going to chat cool ways to really get fun cross-curricular interdisciplinary activities using our Explorers all-in-one STEAM lab, which has a whole animation interface as well as, of course, more design and activities. You kind of got a little bit of a sneak preview with my surprise Van Gogh. But yeah, I'll stick around if anyone has specific questions for Tinkercad. We can still show a few more things in that if you had anything you really wanted to see.
Yeah, and I definitely want to encourage you to utilize those YouTube videos. They are very helpful. They will walk you through everything that you need to know. But just give yourself some grace and don't be afraid to just jump right in and start it. Maybe learn something on your own first before you teach it to your students. That's a good way to start. Be honest with your students and let them know like this is something that you're learning too along with them, and you'll get through it together.
I actually just posted a testimonial that went live today, 5 hours ago, showing some really fun design ideas from a school where eighth graders were doing things for kindergartners based on their drawings, and fourth graders were working with professional architects. Loads of cool stories. Watch that. It's a lot of good inspiration as well.
That's probably my favorite testimonial that we've ever done. Honestly, just the you can just see the joy in the kids' faces. And it just, I mean, there's
That
no
was the
words.
theme. That was the
Yeah.
theme of this testimonial was joy, and I love it.
Mhm. It's the reason why we're here, right?
Yes. And because it's fun for us.
Exactly.
Can you add or assign one of the tutorials via the Activities tab? I don't know that one, Jillian. Do you?
I don't know. Let's try it.
I will let you share, or do you have to add your own designs? I know you can add your own designs, and if you're doing any of the My STEM Kids design challenges and we want students to work from a pre-made design, like the keychain model in the kindergarten one, we actually provide that STL to you. So you can just use the import button, set it up as your activity that way, and the teacher guides actually walk you through how to do that as well. Um, but yeah, Jillian will show you that right now. Great question.
So it turns out you can. So if you come down here and click on tutorials and then click browse all tutorials, here's the different tutorials that they have. So they have them broken down by the different modules that Tinkercad offers. So your students they can build stuff with the blocks, and they can also use codes to build stuff too. And then these are different circuits that they can use. But when you find something you want your students to do, like here's the view it one. All you do is click on the tutorial and then hit add to class activity. You'll need to have your class activity already written out, or you can hit create new activity and then just add it to your new activity here. And then once your students log into their classroom, they'll see that activity under all of their activities. So that's a nice feature that Tinkercad has.
Yeah, while you're in here, Jillian, would you show how to import a STL file in Tinkercad? If not, I can, but
Sure. All right, so if you are ready to create a new 3D design, something that I always do, always rename it, is it's good practice to teach your students. All right, so
naming
then
conventions are also technology standards. Fancy that.
exactly. All right, so from here, when you're ready to import something, you come up here to import, and then I can choose a file here. And Tinkercad supports STL, OBJ, and SVG files. So the files that I have are probably all STL files. All right, so let's see. We'll do this guy. This is a little fidget spinner. And then I just import my file and it's loading.
Depending on the size of the file, it can take some time. I think Tinkercad does have a upper size limit on file size of like 100,000 or something megabytes. It's big, but I have run into it. Turns out sometimes when you do 3D scanning at high quality or museum replica 3D scans, they end up a little bit beefy.
Hmm, there we go. So there's my little model. I've added it in. I can do whatever I want to it now, so I can scale it. I'm going to use the shift key so that I scale it in, because what I don't want to do is change that, because
That would
then
not function anymore.
no, it's not going to function. So holding down that shift key and then scaling it that way. And then one thing I like to do is duplicate it. So that way I can print a bunch of them for my students, fill up the whole build plate as much as I can. Let's see.
And then if you wanted to set this up as your basic activity, or it's like, let's say they're going to add their initials to these little gears.
Okay.
I think it's
So,
more about how to set up the activity was the question based
okay.
on
So I just want one of these on here. So I'm going to leave that and I'm going to rename this fidget so that I know what I'm talking about. All right, so that's in there. All right, so let's go back to our dashboard and there's my design fidget. So now I'm going to go over to classes and I'm going to choose a class that I already have. And then under activities, I'm going to create an activity. Let's see if I can pull it out. Okay, so here is fidget. All right, so I need to create a new design, create my 3D design. Okay, so it's not going to pull it over from something that I already have in my dashboard, but again, what I just did was import my STL file, so I can just do that same thing again.
or the other option would be to, like I had multiple tabs open and just copy it in from one tab to another. So there's a
Yes.
couple different ways. I couldn't remember if you had to do the design up front or if you could do it later. Looks like they want you to do it later, but both options work. You just have different workarounds for it.
Yes.
Another question came in suggestions to find fidget spinner bases like you found. I recommended Thingiverse.
Yep, that's where that one came from.
You can also just like search online for 3D model library. There's loads of them out there.
Yeah.
Sketchfab, um, I'm drawing a blank on some of the other ones. My Mini Factory, those two are both really good if you have like history or social studies types things or art things, because they have a lot of monuments from around the world. That's where a lot of my museum replica type things come from. But Thingiverse is just a crowdsourced library, so it has everything you can think of, which we always add a word of warning. It has everything you can think of.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
Before sending your students wild and free into any of these 3D model repositories, other than like my STEM Kits, which is curated and designed by us for education, you want to, just keep an eye out for what your
Yeah.
students are finding on them.
And there are really, really great educational models on there, but there's
Yeah.
also things that you may not want your kids to see on there.
Yep. I had a PD once where someone's like, "Do they have a fire truck?" I'm like, "Yes," and we found it. And they're like, "Do you have a martini glass?" Yes. "Do they have an engagement ring?" Yes, but come on, man.
Oh, you just reminded me of something that I wanted to show everybody. Okay,
We
so
still
you
have a decent crowd
used,
here, so
I know, yeah, we're gonna use it while we can. Okay, so you had talked about the search button, so you can search for different shapes and stuff. I wanted to show you something that I found in here. So I was working on this project for a school, and they needed a battery holder for a different a STEM activity that they were doing, and I wanted to help them create it, but I didn't, the easiest way to do it was to search for a battery in Tinkercad and then pull over the battery that I needed. This is a AAA battery and this is the exact measurements that it's supposed to be. So then I was able to just create my 3D model around the size battery that I needed to make sure that it fits into my model perfectly.
yeah,
So,
actually, so from that drop down, if you close out of search, from the where it says basic shapes, you can drop down and they have an entire collection of everyday objects, which are pre-built to size. So there's like vehicles and machines, and those aren't necessarily to size, but there's actually a category that has everyday objects that you might find in a classroom, that has, I see, yeah, straws, water bottles, pencils. Is that toilet paper?
it sure is.
And these are built roughly to scale, I think, for a lot of them. So, although if that is a AAA battery, I'm not sure the headphones are. A
Yeah.
lot of these were built to scale originally, but the library may have expanded.
Hmm. See what a laptop is. Oh, that's
Yeah,
definitely
I
to
think the
scale.
headphones might just be wrong.
Yeah, maybe they're like headphones
Doll
for
headphones? Yeah.
the class pet headphones.
Ooh, and I have one more fun thing to share as well.
Okay.
A feature that I use all the time and is not something that a lot of people discover by intention. A lot of people discover this one by accident, which honestly may have been how I designed or discovered it. But you notice what this is a kid asked me to design a dragon, so I designed a dragon. Um,
That's really good.
little things like this tail, like this body, I did using the duplicate and repeat button. So you can take a basic object, and when you go to use this duplicate and repeat button, I click it once, and now I'm going to move it a little bit over, and I'm going to scale my object just a little bit down, and maybe I add a tiny bit of rotation to it as well. But I haven't clicked outside my object or done anything like that, and I click it again, and it does all those same edits that I made every single time. So I can just keep going, and it scales it down by the same percentage. It does the little bit of a rotation, and that is one of the fastest ways to get a very cool, complex object. Our St. Patrick's Day charm used this same feature. We did this for a 4-leaf clover with students. And then actually on the dragon topic, this is another new one. Again, for any of you who do Illustrator and design type work, you can just do full like vector style art here where you add points, and then you can, why won't it let me close? Fine, weird. All right, enter. This worked so well earlier. There we go. Okay, I just needed to make it a little longer. And then I can even alter my points to have them be like rounded. So if I have my object selected, I can adjust my point styles to be different things. I want that to be.
Why would this be useful? Why would a student want to use this
Ah,
feature of it?
well, I see this as being very useful for polygons, for complex shapes. I made really cool dragon wings earlier today, and now it is being ornery. There it goes, double click, that's what it was. This is a new tool, I'm still learning it. But like, again, these are just some of the ways that you can very quickly create a complex object, and when I click finish sketch, it actually 3Difies it. So now I could attach this to like my little baby dragon here. If this is my mama, this is my baby, you know. I think that's a really good way to connect 2D to 3D and to create really complex objects that otherwise you may not be able to build in Tinkercad. So I'm very excited by this feature. It's kind of an adaptation of their scribble tool, which is just drawing. So you get to draw organic shapes. This is now using some of those other technology type tools to create this type of a shape. So that's how I would use it. But yeah, it's like it could definitely tie back to any sort of math, geometry, or you can just do fun, more complex types patterns.
That is very cool. Very, very cool. You know what? It looks like a bat wing and Halloween is coming up. So I feel like this is a great opportunity to get your students in Tinkercad and get them start working on something that interests them.
Is there a very reasonable chance that our Halloween costumes in our household are going to involve 3D printed components this year? Yes.
My candy bowl is 3D printed.
All right, well, I think we have gone over. We're now at the full hour. Thanks for everyone who stuck around. I love that you all joined us for even a full hour, and hopefully you gained some really useful knowledge. But yeah, thanks for everyone for joining, and we will be back next month.